Welcome to Negotiation Mastery with Dr. Gloria SMMA. This is your number one negotiation podcast for professional women. In this show, we talk about topics that give women leverage to negotiate for the salary and work conditions they deserve. In each episode, we bring guests from different parts of the world, different stages in their careers, and from diverse backgrounds to share their journey and experience. Today, I have someone from Australia. His name is Josh. He's the founder of the Just Be Nice project. It's a social enterprise working to ensure people get the help they need, when they need it, and for as long as they need it. So, Josh is a social impact expert with lived experience of both profound challenges and transformative support. His mission is very simple: is to create extraordinary positive change in the world through helping people make ordinary positive change. He's a master communicator from building sites, boardrooms to schools and stadiums. He's committed to changing the way people help people. I am really excited to have Josh on the show with me today. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Very kind of you.
Yes. Um, your project, it's not usual. Just be nice, it's not usual.
Yeah. Yeah.
People have lots of good causes they believe in that they work on, but they don't call it just be nice. And I think I'm a nice person, but I would not tag myself that. And I think my niceness, not trying to blow my trumpet, it came from when I was in kindergarten. I had a teacher. It was a Catholic kindergarten, and for all I could remember, all the Bible stories he said was of the Good Samaritan. That's all I remember. He said those stories like almost every day. That it got ingrained in my head, and it taught me how to be kind. I'm still learning how to be kind. I don't think we can ever attain that kindness because sometimes I catch myself. I was telling you how I caught myself when I did something that wasn't kind. Yeah. So, what was the influence in your life that led you to this? Because my influence was my teacher in kindergarten. What is yours?
Yeah, it's interesting. First of all, I'm also not like nice all the time. Like it's not. I didn't call it Josh is nice all the time. It's a reminder really, and the name was very deliberate because in the work that I do, so we're trying to get really great outcomes for people, but the entry level, when you're trying to involve people in what is usually a bit of a sophisticated kind of system of help, and with people that have complex needs, that can be a lot for people to try and take on board and understand, and that can be difficult. So I wanted to call it something that was really sort of pointing at the easiest, lowest hanging fruit, which is just to remind people to just be nice. Like when you have those moments and you catch yourself, that's what you're doing. When you go, that moment I could have been better, or I was unkind in that moment, that wasn't good,
Yeah.
or I was a bit grumpy. And it's about trying to just catch yourself and do better next time, and make sure you go, if you're going to center yourself before an interaction or before you do something, that you try and remind yourself, like, be nice, be understanding. And like you said, there are a lot of causes and there are a lot of things out in the world, and there's, lots of, social enterprises, non-profits, NGOs, and some of them have names that if you don't know about the organisation, you'll have no idea what they're doing. There's one in Australia, for instance, that focuses on eating disorders, and it's called the Butterfly Foundation. They do some really great work, but if you just saw it on a poster, you'd be like, the Butterfly Foundation, you could have
It could be anything.
you wouldn't be unreasonable to think it's got something to do with
Butterfly.
like a zoo or something, or with
It's
actual
actually butterflies.
butterflies.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so I thought, look, if I call this the Just Be Nice project, if no one even clicks on a link or looks at it or, asks another question, but they see it on the vans and they see it on the
They have
T-shirts
an
and that sort of
idea of
stuff,
what.
it can just be a reminder in that moment, to just go, you know what, I've just been reminded
Oh,
to
oh,
be a bit
oh,
nicer to
oh.
the barista
The
or whatever,
name. So the name, it's not just for for lack of a better word, it's not just for branding, but as a reminder to everyone. That's
Mm.
oh wow, that's really cool and very thoughtful.
Yeah. Yes, that was very intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very intentional. But I was just going to say that, like, for us, it's the beginning, of the journey when you're trying to look after people. And we actually make a distinction because I get a pushback sometimes of being nice is maybe disingenuous or people pretend when they're being nice and all this sort of stuff. And the way that we define being nice so that we can sort of design our programs is that being nice is about how you carry yourself in the world. So the standards of behaviour that you think are leaving people in a better place, the way you carry yourself through a room and through life and being nice to people.
Yeah.
But doing good, and that's the bit that we're trying to deliver all the time on, is a bit further down the sort of chain. And doing good is about getting the outcome that the people you're trying to help want. And so if I just walk through and give high fives to everybody, I'm being nice, but I haven't really done good. I haven't really solved their problems. And so we make a very clear distinction that our ultimate goal is that we're trying to bring people into the system of doing good and make sure that people get the help that they need. But the easiest thing that a non-verbal toddler can do and a 100-year-old person can do is be reminded to sort of be nice and start there. It's a great sort of starting point.
So from what you say, it's like a spectrum from being nice and then doing good. Like those are two different things from what you said. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
But what was your influence? You just explained what you do, but what was the influence? Were you always so growing up? Were you like this nice kid, and you know everyone liked you, or was it from you wanting people to like you? What was the influence?
I mean, I think I definitely wanted people to like me. I couldn't say that everyone did. I, I think that since I was very, very young, I have always had this question of like, why don't people get the help that they need, really? Like, there's so much goodwill, and it just seems like there's so many resources in the world, and that there are people that need help that's not, we love to sort of assign blame to people in need and sort of say it's your fault that this thing happened or that you need this level of assistance or whatever. And I saw so many people when I was younger, in particular, that I was like, well, that's not their fault. Like that's happened to them. These are circumstances beyond their control. So how is it possible that we just leave them without good help? And combination of that sort of awareness and sort of wanting to solve that problem, and I guess some personal challenges, in our lives, in our family lives, and we had a range of exposure to a range of different kinds of struggles, and then coupled with the belief that to do anything well and to have a good impact, you've got to be really good at something. You need to be excellent, or else like you're not able to do as much if you're not as good at something. And for me, that the excellence piece was always oriented towards being better at finding ways to make sure people get good help and understanding why they don't. So my whole career, my education, all my work has always been oriented to better understanding that and being able to solve it more comprehensively and have a better understanding of it. And so I sort of have had that orientation my entire life. And it's not from an epiphanous moment. It's kind of it's just been this compounding, gradual, constant feature of my existence that sort of, has had a number of really positive and negative inputs along the way that have sort of helped me, get where I am.
So it's more like the more you do it, the more you want to do it, the more you want to do it, and then the thought just gets bigger, the idea gets bigger, and the implementation gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're a doctor, you understand that sometimes the more you know about something, the more you realize you don't know, and you've got to go pull on those threads, and you've got to understand some auxiliary things to really get to the heart of this thing. And
Yes.
to do good, I believe it's a skill. It's a skill that you can cultivate, that you can learn. It's not something you just intrinsically know how to do. And certainly that's true if you're working with people of different circumstances, different cultural challenges, different environments, facing different problems. It's a skill, and you need to develop, like any skill, you need to develop it by learning, working, doing things. But the difference is sort of similar to medicine, is like your failures can have a really serious impact on people. So you want to limit your like practice or your learning on people who need help. And so that, I think, means you've got to do even more work to make sure that you're not leaving them worse than you found them when you do work with these people that need help.
So for me as a doctor, even now that I've moved to Dubai, every day I study. just so my skills are still sharp. I study medicine. I review questions just so my skills are sharp. How can someone practice? How do you learn to be good? How can you get better at being good?
Yeah, so the term that I sort of coined is called impact literacy or social impact literacy, and what that is the capacity to recognize and create and participate in high quality social impact activities. And there's a range of frameworks that are sort of teach to cover a whole the whole gamut of what you need to be considering when you're engaging in these activities. And some of them are about people's attitudes, for instance, even just about charity and about help and about whether or not people deserve your assistance or not. Part of it is about people's different aspirations. So you'll find, like in a lot of communities and with a lot of people, sort of what they want for the people they care about the most, their kids or their parents or their very close friends. They want this level of medical care. They want this kind of access to housing. They want this kind of pay for their jobs. Will be like this. And then they'll look at another community or group of people over here and they'll have completely different aspirations. They'll be like, well, you deserve $3 an hour. And, why should you just get great medical care or access to this stuff that I have? Like, the aspirations are very different. So tackling those things is part of it. And then part of it is about how we measure good outcomes. And we sort of define a really good social impact, a gold standard in social impact, as being comprehensive, inclusive, high output for low input, and long term. So those sort of four things, if you're sort of scoring high on all of them, then you're on your way to getting a really good social impact. Most interventions don't score very well on all of those metrics. They're missing stuff. And it's in those gaps that we try and work and fill, either with material help, logistics, help people understand better, connection to understanding, whatever it is, to make sure that we bring all of those attempts in communities up to like a complete outcome.
There was one of the four pillars you talked about. I didn't really about is it high output for low input for low input or what explain
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so high output for low input. It's almost like an efficiency or an economy dividend. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of a couple so that you can sort of see how it works, I guess. If I take, this is common, people want to maybe volunteer their time, right? Let's say you're an accountant and you work in an accounting firm and you want to commit some time to something, and we take you to a soup kitchen. Now, in terms of perhaps, team building is something they look to do. Sometimes they just want to show people that a problem exists and they think that this kind of activity might help. And they go, and you're doing some good. But if you're an accountant and you're making a reasonable wage and you're managing other people's money and you're doing all these sorts of things, and then you're spooning soup in a soup kitchen, what you're doing is pretty low output. Spooning soup, it's like anyone can do it. I can get kids to do it. It's a pretty high input because your hourly rate would probably pay for half a dozen, people to do this, or your day rate if you were just going to commit that. And so it's a really inefficient way of delivering help. Whereas if I get you to do financial assessments for people that we're working with so that we get a really clear picture of where they're at and what we need to do to address their issues, that's really high output for low input because you're using your skills. So the input is low, literally based on what you're capable of doing, and it's understanding that those sorts of things means you keep people doing what they're really good at and contributing at the end of their skill set. And you avoid these like, oh, we're going to take 50 people to dig a hole. Like I knew some people that took a bunch of professionals, for instance, to India to dig some septic tanks in for this village. Now, you may or may not have been to India, but if there's a place that's got a lot of labour available at pretty low rates,
It's India.
It's India, And so taking a whole bunch of people who pay for flights,
Right.
who give their time up at work, tens and tens of thousands of dollars who are professionals with soft hands who've never dug anything in their life. And digging is a skill, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
I hear you.
People do it poorly. I understand this. I'm a tradesman, you know. That's really low output for a really high input,
You know,
which is so
you
so
would think
so it's not good. It could be much
for
better.
you that's common sense, but for me it's like wow, because sometimes you go, oh well, let me just go to this place, I can help them clean. Meanwhile, I can either see them as patients, or I can go work, make money, and then send that money over to them. They would have someone who would, they can employ someone and then get change. That's a good way. Wow. Hmm. All right.
But again, so for instance, though, if as someone with
Mhm.
skills, you know, that are transferable and useful, like particularly medicine. So for myself, I'm a carpenter, for instance, right? So if I went to a country and I was trying to help build some stuff, I'm actually using skills I do have, and
Correct.
I'm able to teach people.
Correct.
And there's no burden on this place I'm going to teach me how to do this thing I'm supposed to
Right.
be helping them with. And if you went over and you took some people and you were like, listen, this sort of entry level, this is how you draw blood, this is how you give, you know, a vaccination. This is how we dress a wound. And well, that's absolutely doing what you should be doing.
Correct.
If you went over and dug a hole, that would be a waste. But if you're over there, and it is a case by case basis, and we've
Correct.
got these four kind of metrics that we're constantly looking at.
Right.
Um, but it's about taking the time and having the understanding and sophistication to even begin the process of working out whether this is a really impactful thing or if it could be better
Yeah.
or whatever, you know?
So I think I just learned a more efficient way to do good. Like, so if I want to do good, I have to be sure of the weight of the output and the weight of the input, just so I'm giving it the right, I'm putting it in the right frame to get the maximum output I want from that good that I'm doing. Huh. Let me ask.
Yeah, so that's one of the metrics. Yeah, that's one of the metrics
I
for
like
sure.
that. Let me ask you another question. So I did a podcast. That was just a solo podcast, just me talking about good girls finishing last. Because when people see you as a good girl, when you position yourself as a good person, what most people assume is you don't have boundaries. It means you say yes to thankless jobs. Whatever. Oh, she's such a nice person, and people just want to take advantage of you. So how would you, for someone who your job is just to be nice to people, is just to be good to people? So how do you create boundaries?
Yeah. It's a great question, and that's something that is constantly evolving, I think, because I think your boundaries should also not be static all the time. You know, there's times in your life where, oh, particularly when we talk about trying to look after people around you, I say, like, if you need help, you know, you should try and practice leaning on the people around you, and that can be very difficult for people. It's difficult for me. But then when you've got a bit of extra capacity, you should encourage people to lean on you. And so that boundary of leaning and being lent on isn't static. It will change based on your capacity and what's going on in your life, and you know whether or not you got sleep last night, or you're 14 coffees deep on a 36-hour day that you have been, you know, flat out. You know, you're going to be able to do different things. So for me, I have a couple of things. One of them is that I have a real action orientation sort of bias, that I lean towards doing the thing and saying yes, as opposed to not doing it. Um, and sometimes you can overdo it, but when you pay attention to those moments, that's when you start to be able to maybe make better decisions about, maybe I won't give as much next time in that circumstance if all the other things are sort of similar. So I think it's paying attention to those things, and ultimately it's about carrying yourself the way that you want to carry yourself. And if that means for me that it's important to show up in certain ways so that I sleep at night sort of secure in the knowledge that I do what I say I should do to myself, then that's worth more than, I don't know, even rest for just rest's sake. You know, it's nice to sit on the couch and do nothing, and you know you need rest time. But there are times when you'll want to say no to someone because you can't be bothered.
Yeah.
that you should say, like for me, that I feel like I should say yes to. You know, I sort of have this sort of back of my. We used to have a bunch of Just Be Nice project vans that we would use, and because I would drive these vans around, anytime anyone wanted to move house, obviously, like I'd get a call, and I had this thing I didn't tell everyone, but I was like, if someone asked me to move house, and I don't have something in the calendar on that day, I have to say yes. I will say yes. It's important to me to show up like that. And there were plenty of days where that meant a big day of moving someone's house. Maybe I didn't have anything booked in on that day, but I did on every other day for 20 days either side of it. And some people would say, "Oh, that's overdoing it." But for me, I sleep at night knowing I'm always trying to be that kind of person that I want to be, and I mostly get there. We always fall short, but that's how I manage. That's how I manage the boundaries. And I think being someone who shows up and does the right thing, if it's all being asked of you in good faith, then you should make a real effort. And then if people are asking you or treating you in bad faith, that you have permission to not have to do everything that they want you to do. I think it's your capacity and the good faith or bad faith of the people that are sort of leaning on you or asking you to do stuff. Between those, you work out when it's appropriate to step back and say, oh, maybe not this time, or I can't at the moment. But generally speaking, I think you feel better if you show up in the world like as a generous person doing the things that you would like others to do for you.
You're truly nice. I would, for me, for me, I try to be kind. I do, but I also, you know what? I think anybody who is mean is someone who's been traumatized. I think meanness is a response, is a trauma response. Someone who's been taken advantage of before, and then they become so impervious to other people because they're like, oh, I don't want people to take advantage of me. So that I think that's where meanness comes from. So something I try to tell, because I coach women and all my friends who go through stuff, I say if you go through stuff and then you develop a negative way of responding in life, it means whatever you went through won. Because the goal, I think, is the fight between good and evil. And if something bad happens to you and you say, okay, you know what, I'm going to be mean, then that means whatever happened to you won. But if something happens to you and you say, you know what, I'm still going to show up in kindness, then it means you overcame that situation. That's how I see it. But I want to ask you a question. How do you have strong, hard conversations, because people think you're nice. So maybe you have an employee who is not showing up as they ought to show up. They feel like, well, he's nice. He would understand. They show up late. They're like, well, I didn't have a way to get to work. They don't do their job. They give you these excuses of life happening. How do you handle that?
Honestly, that's a challenge. It's a challenge because everyone doesn't respond the same way to the same
Yeah,
things. I don't generally have a problem. My I don't have a problem with sort of speaking my mind, in general. And there are things I vehemently disagree with, and I will make my position clear on certain things.
yeah,
But I'm always trying in my communication in
yeah,
general. I try to demonstrate space for all the different experiences and not be too full on. Having said that, I struggle with it because there's people you have staff, you have friends, you have people you come across, teammates if you're playing sport, where how you put things across is how they take it, and it works, and it's smooth, and it's awesome, and that's so good. And then there's other people, and you'll be like, oh, can you do this thing? And they'll come back, and it's like, well, legally, but all of a sudden they just come back with this thing, and you're like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't understand why I'm getting like a formal response about, oh, well, I've got this going on. And you're like, okay, like, wow, that's cool. Like, of course it's cool, whatever. And I think that when you're trying to manage the different communication styles, that's where it gets challenging. And so I do my furious whinging about it away from the person to, like, I'll come home and do it at home or something, so that to try and find the way to have the patience with the person that I'm speaking to. In my work, I work with people that are disengaged, for instance, from employment. And it can be very frustrating when you're trying to get them to go to work that they don't go. You go through this whole process of trying to, G them up and train them and teach them stuff, and you might take them to work for a bit and then they disengage. And my frustration with that is the same as probably anybody's, but my frustration about that behavior, I just try not to put the frustration on them. I do my frustration over here, and then I come back to them and I go, right, like, what's going on? Are you nervous? Are you tired? Are you staying up too late? Like, let's work on the solution. I still feel all the same rage about it sometimes, like, oh my goodness, this is so annoying, or this is so difficult to deal with. But it's coming from somewhere at their end, and it's really rare that just yelling at someone about it and taking your frustrations out with this sort of communication barrier is going to solve it. So I think I try to show up as a more patient version of myself than I really am by allowing myself still the grace to be furious, but I just have to do it somewhere else, not at the person. And it's not a perfect system, and I wish I was maybe a little bit more actually naturally patient, potentially. And I didn't even feel like going home and going, I'm so annoyed. But I'm not quite there yet. So that's the best sort of middle ground that I think I try to do, is be really understanding of the people that you're in front of and hold the space and patience for them, and try and build trust with them that you're in their corner and you're trying to get to the bottom of it. And then when you walk out of the room and you go, and you're in a safe space with a friend or family member or whatever, that you go, I can't believe I have to deal with this. This is so annoying. This person's driving me crazy, and do it over there.
But how do you keep them accountable? How do you?
Well, I think you're still keeping them accountable, because you make it clear that, like, this needs to happen, or that there is a gap between where you are and where we need you to be. And sometimes people need to be given the opportunity to step away from that. In some instances, that's not appropriate. You would, like, again, medicine's a great example. It's like, I might want you to, run a bit more for your health. And then you go, I'm just going to do some walking. Well, you know what? That's okay. That's better than nothing. It's moving in the right direction. So that's a compromise that can be okay. But if I'm halfway through a surgery and you say, I'm stopping, I'm walking away, you're like, I really can't let you. This is going to be awful. There's no meeting in the middle here. This needs to be finished. Yeah. We really need to finish this. Yeah. So where we can find alternatives that make sense, I really try and do that. Yeah. Where there is no alternative, and I mean, like, a classic one for me with the people I work with is like paying the rent. Mm. Like, we have to find a way. The rent will keep coming up every week. Your landlord isn't going to just go, don't worry about this couple of months. But the work that you don't want to go to, for instance, we can maybe find some different work or some easier ways to get there, or change the hours around, or find someone to sort of maybe mentor or partner with you in the workplace a little bit more intensively, or just like be around a little bit more, or we need to check in, or we need to just make sure you've got lunch at work. So it's another incentive to go there. And so you'll make the effort to be flexible where you can, but where you can't be, you've got to just be like, listen, this is what has to happen, and try not to yell at people the way that your gut is like so frustrated and wants you to do, if that makes sense.
So you try to, as much as you can, you try to reframe going to work, or reframe the people you work with to get motivated to get to the next level. You try to reframe the whole process, like, oh, there's lunch at work, that's an incentive to go. But how come still?
Yeah, you've got to imagine a world in which, like, why wouldn't you do this? Like, why wouldn't you do this particular thing? In your mind, for a lot of people, they'll go, there's so much at stake, or this is such a big opportunity. Why wouldn't you take it? And that's from your perspective. But from this other person's perspective, the alternatives are scarier than what they're doing. They're always trying to make the best choice based on what they know and believe and feel. So from their experience, there is something missing, or it's not enough, or there is some blocker, and we've got to try and find it, you know. But that's mostly in like, you know, I work in a space where it's really important that I hold that patience. When I was coaching sports teams, I probably didn't do as much
Oh,
of that. You know, like
that's
just
different.
you'd just be harder
Yeah,
about
because
it.
people who do
Yeah.
sports, it's a different level of mindset. If you're into sports, it means you're competitive. It means you show up. You want to win. So those kind of people, when you push them, they go far. But people who already feel disadvantaged, when you push them, they go down. So you got to know how to balance when you coach. Yeah. S-
Yeah, that's
talking
right.
about
Yeah.
sports, there was one of your quotes that I saw that I just fell in love with. Absolutely, it was about comparison. This is my view of comparison. I try as much as I can not to compare myself with anybody. However, I can see people doing stuff and I'm like, oh, I'm inspired by that. And I learn what you're doing. My goal is not, oh, I'm going to be better than this person because I'm not competitive. For doctors, that's very unusual because it's a very competitive field. People who go in there are those who think they are the smartest. They think it's just what it is. But personally, I can see someone studying for hours on end. I'm like, good for you. You may top the class. I'm like, good for you. All I know is I want to give my best. And sometimes my best, based on my innate abilities, maybe nothing compared to someone else, and then also someone else's best, maybe nothing compared to my innate abilities. So I would work hard and give my best. And I'm like, you know what? I gave my best to this, and I'm sure that was the best I could do. And if someone shows me how I can do better, of course, I'll learn and do better. But there was something you said, and it's something that I think about before, but you put words to it. It was a quote about a child, maybe not telling kids that, you should eat your food because there's someone else somewhere who does not have a meal. And you said it creates either a feeling of superiority, and then on the other end, it might create. That was just so beautifully said. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I first of all, I think it's a great attitude to be, you know, just attempting to do your best everywhere. It's a really good attitude to take, and it's definitely worth cultivating in everybody. The quote that you're talking about is, this comes up a lot because I've got to talk to people, for instance, who have a lot about people who don't have a lot, and there's some pretty big divides in understanding, and the way that people sometimes talk to their kids about stuff. For instance, and growing up, this was really common, where they'd be like, you know, there's starving kids, so you should eat your food and be grateful that you've got
Yeah,
some, for instance. And what that teaches kids is to place your gratitude, you know, in a context of comparison. I've got more than this person, so I should feel grateful for that. But then when you go out into the world, you see people who have more than you. And so then it's like, well,
sad.
should I feel the opposite? Should I feel hard done by? Because like this person has better food, a better car, better clothes. And, you know, that's all been turbocharged by the internet and by social media and stuff. So I think teaching people to be grateful for things because of by way of comparison is fraught with danger because there's always someone with
Yeah,
more, someone who's better, someone who's got more, someone who's done better. But if you teach people to put their opportunities in context, then that can actually help them understand what's going on in the world a little bit better. So by all means, teach children to put the opportunities that they have in context, and that teach them they're not wholly responsible for everything that's ever happened to them and everything they've ever achieved, and then help them put into context another person's experience where this person is in this situation, and so these are challenges that they'll be facing, and these are things they've got to deal with, and this person is in this situation, and you know this comes with attendant opportunities that we don't have access to, or so let's not get too carried away about this nepo baby, getting all these opportunities. Like, yeah, they're the children of people who have a lot of access and a lot of
yeah,
means, and that's why they have that. It's not a commentary on whether you're good enough
right.
or not good enough. And that's maybe a more productive way to talk about it with people. But comparison is fraught with danger because there's just always someone better. There's always someone with more, and you're always battling that if that's your sort of gauge for whether or not you should feel
Grateful.
feel
Yeah.
content.
Yeah, when I saw that out, because yeah, I used to think about it, because when they say, oh, there's a kid starving somewhere, and it just gives some people, like, and I'm Nigerian, my friend, I'm Nigerian, so there's a kid starving in Africa. I'm like, why should your gratitude be based on the kid who is starving in Africa? Just be grateful for your food, and that kid there might be really happy, you have no idea. So that kid's happiness should not be based on the other person's depression. Just be, I no when I read that, it just made me like the work that you do even more. So I teach.
It's one of those weird, like, white people helping out in the world tropes that they come back from developing countries, for instance, and they're like, oh, they're so happy with nothing, and it's actually like a hedge for them to not make any material changes to the lives of these people in these countries where they've got, less infrastructure and stuff. Because, oh well, these kids look so happy and they have nothing. Yeah, but they still probably benefit from some of this stuff that we've got over here. Like, that doesn't mean don't do anything for them.
Correct, correct. That is so correct. That is so correct. So this show is called Negotiation Mastery, Josh. And with the work you do, I know you do a lot of negotiation when you go to talk to people, when you ask for funds, or just negotiating with people to get to the next level in their life, just mentoring the people you work with. So what's your number one negotiation skill?
I think the number one thing is to enter in a negotiation, or if you're trying to sort of change someone's mind, which is very similar. I've got to do this a lot, where I've got to sort of help people care about the stuff that we care about. And I think the dominant important thing is to remember that when you're going in to do that, that going in to change someone's mind and bring them around to your point of view is not the same as being right. Like, and it's not enough to be right. That if you want to change someone's mind, you have to meet them where they are and speak to their experience and speak to their anxieties and what they know or believe, and bring them around from there. It's not enough for me to just go, here's a page of why I'm right, and just give it to them and go, if you don't believe me or come over to this way of thinking, you're an idiot. Like, that's not
No.
enough. If you want to change someone's mind, you have to meet them where they are, which means you have to have some empathy for their experience, whether or not you think it's disgusting or their point of view is abhorrent or their biases are infuriating. If you want to be annoyed at them, that's easy. Like, you can just be annoyed at them. You don't need to worry about that. But if you do want to be in the business of changing minds or bringing someone over to being closer to where you are in your point of view or your understanding of the world, you have to meet them where they are, and you have to make adjustments based on that, not based on your own feelings or your own commitment to like a set of facts or a view of the world. And I think people miss that a lot. They go, I need to know more simply to have more facts to be correct, not I need to understand more about how a person could end up thinking the way that this person thinks, and then act accordingly. And that's true if you're trying to get people to donate, money or time to a cause that they sort of go, why should we help these poor kids? Or why should I do this? Or that sounds like a classic one is, that sounds like a lot of money, because people have very different ideas about what a lot of money is based on whether they feel like it's going to charity or to help someone, or whether it's going into their bank account. And so you've got to meet them where they are, and not always just go, if you think $10,000 is a lot of money, I'll just come in and ask for 1,000. If you think $10,000 is a lot of money, it's my job to sort of place it in a context in which you understand it to be not that much money. And then all of a sudden you go, yeah, okay, that makes sense, and that's very different. That's a different way of approaching like a negotiation or a change making or a conversation like that, I think.
So it's more like you having empathy, number one, and then meeting the person where they are, and then communicate your thoughts once you've understood them, and then you've met them where they are. They can connect with you, and then you can reframe your ask. just try to say, okay, you think $1,000, $10,000 is a lot. You're like, all right, let me reframe it. Give you like, maybe you could say, I don't know, maybe
Would you like me to give you an example of that?
by all means.
I'll give you I'll give you an example, right? So I meet with a guy from a bank. Now in Australia, we have four big banks. They dominate. They're the most profitable banks in the
Yeah.
world. The massive profits. They have basically unlimited money, and most of them deliver pretty poor services. Like it's not like they're even doing that much, right? But they're big, and they've got to do some, for instance, like say corporate social responsibility type stuff. Now, I'm talking to a guy, and they've got a program that they're talking about changing communities. Like we're changing communities. We're making a huge difference. Okay, cool. No worries. You're allowed to make those claims. It's no big deal. So we're talking about it, and he's telling me about like they're giving these $10,000 grants, right, to these communities. And he's like, so the way he's talking to me about it is that he's looking for me to be like endorse the program and go, yeah, great, that's great. But I didn't have that position. I said, lad, I don't think it's very good. And he's like, what do you mean? And the way that they've done the marketing, and this is also the way the system is set up in general, like for charities and all this kind of stuff. But they've got $100,000 to spend. It's $10,000 grants. So they get 10 pieces of content that they spend money making. And, it's like for the marketing team, it's easy. They've got all this stuff that they use. They make these claims about changing the world with this money. The numbers to lay people might sound big. And I go, okay, you're giving this couple who do this community work in this sort of rural community, you're giving them $10,000. He goes, right. And you're going to change the lives of all these people in this community. He goes, yeah, that's right. And I sort of said, well, how long would the bank operate for $10,000? Like what millionth of a second, because their budget's in the billions. He's like, I don't know. I said, well, what about your team? Like, how long would your team operate for $10,000? How long would you operate for $10,000? Maybe a month? Not even a month. This guy would be on $300,000 a year, right? So you on $300,000 a year with a team of 7 or 8 in this giant multi-billion-dollar infrastructure that is the bank, you guys couldn't just process these grants for that money. But you're saying that this $10,000 in this community with these two people is going to completely change this entire community, despite the fact you wouldn't even work for a month for that much money. And he's like, yeah, okay. I'm like, the claims between what you expect to get paid and your entire team to get paid, and I'm okay with that. Like, you get paid what you get paid. Right. But don't demand then that because these people are trying to quote unquote do something good, that they only need $10,000. And it's not their fault as these small operators. The $10,000 is the most they've ever gotten in one hit. So they also are very grateful for it because they're like, oh, this is so good. But what happens is small organizations like that or small moments like that, they burn out because it's not enough. It's not enough to do all this huge stuff. No, they need hundreds of thousands of dollars like anybody does. Arguably, they're doing a more important job than these people at the bank are doing. And so it's about putting it into context by meeting them where they are. What do you get paid? Like, what do you... I asked one guy for $30,000 for a program that we were working with about 25 kids to engage them in some education stuff for work. He thought it was a lot of money. I asked him how much it costs to send his kids to these very expensive private schools. Double that for his kids, for one kid. Okay, well,
But he can argue.
Is it a lot for me to look after these 20 kids? Or
he can argue that those are his kids. Those are his primary responsibilities. He can argue that and say, hey, I'm making sacrifices for my kids. Right. So he can argue that, but I get you. But it's just that's comparison.
I mean, that's right. You can make that argument. That's right. You can. And then I sort of go, well, what kid's responsible for their circumstance at 10 years old? Are we going to blame this 10-year-old that they don't have the good fortune of parents that can do that? And that's the negotiation. That's where you have it. And you win some people over and you lose some people, but you've got to meet them where they are. I can't just go, there's 20 kids, they deserve it, you should give us 30 grand. And they go, well, I'm not going to. And you go, well, you're dumb and also not generous. Because that's not true. It's usually not true. They're usually not dumb and they usually are generous in a bunch of different
That's
ways.
correct.
It's just in this context, you've got to find the way through.
It's just priorities at that point in time. Let me,
Totally. Yeah, it's aspirations, it's
yeah,
priorities. Yeah, it's all of those
yeah.
things.
What projects are you working on currently?
So all of our outcomes are basically the same, as we work with people until they're housed and employed and have good mental and physical health outcomes. Or if we're working with sort of a group of people, we're just trying to remove barriers to those outcomes. And where they come from, a range of places. They'll come from referrals from community groups. We do quite a bit of work in, say, like youth justice, so people that are in, the carceral system here in Australia. We work with like local governments with programs there, schools and things like that, providing support to people, in and around school communities. So the outcomes are always the same that we're trying to work towards. Where people come from, that changes. Through a year and over the years, different kinds of communities, migrant, refugee communities, small communities of rural or, regional communities. That sort of changes based on, what's coming through, what's coming down the pipe.
So, like, how many kids do you have in your program right now? Or how many people do you have in your program right now?
Right now, we've probably got about a dozen kids, I reckon, that we're working with at the moment. There's quite a bit going on. And all of our programs are in the context of, like, one of the challenges is to work across housing, employment, sort of mental and physical health. The way that the systems are funded here in Australia, that means that that will go across maybe 6, maybe 7 government departments in the process, and that's at a state level and a federal level. So the systems of assistance that exist already, there's bits that are already in place. And so sometimes we're just navigating small pieces, and sometimes we're doing big chunks. Sometimes we've got really intensive times of work with someone, and then sometimes we've got like a bit more hands off while they go through a couple of other processes, and then we might be back in again. So there's a whole bunch. There's like heaps. I couldn't even tell you how many people that are like have been helped that will call up still or reach out for a little something every now and then. And that goes back 15 years. I've been doing this a very long time. And then there's times where a particular community of people need heaps of help, and you'd be in there doing heaps of stuff for a short period of time to get them over a particular challenge.
So, have you had anyone who's gone through the program who's giving back to the program now?
Yeah, the people who get help are the most helpful people, I find. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's something about people that don't have much, and then they get a hand. I find that those people in those communities are often the most generous.
How has your life turned out differently from what you expected? Because I don't think anyone grows up saying, "Oh, I just want to start a Be Nice project." So, how has your life turned out differently?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's all. I feel like I could tell a version of my life that sounds pretty horrific, with a lot of really horrible stuff in it, and a lot of challenges and a lot of disappointment. And I could tell another version of my life where it just sounds like I'm just cruising and I've just been blessed, the whole time. And I think in reality, it's somewhere in the middle.
Now, I want you to say the truth, the real one, the blend of the reality.
Yeah, it's in the middle, and I have days where I wake up and I just think, what am I doing? I could just do something so much easier than this, and there are days where I wake up and I sort of just am furious at humanity, about the lack of care and just how difficult things are sometimes. But ultimately, I have some wonderful friends. I have a really wonderful, supportive, beautiful partner. I live a life with wonderful experiences and opportunities in it. I don't really have a crisis of purpose, in the sense that I don't feel like I'm not doing what I should be doing. But having said that, there are a number of sacrifices that I've made along the
course.
way in aid of that, and a number of terrible, terrible things that have happened that um, that make it difficult. But if I stopped doing what I do, I don't know that I would be able to sleep at night being like happy with the choice that I made in aid of maybe some additional financial gain or security or whatever. But also, I think that it's this difficult by definition, and that's why there aren't many people that do it, because they tap out, and that's the problem. Like, people tap out because it's too difficult, and so I just go, look, I've been blessed with the capacity to endure a lot, so I will. And the other day I was just having beers with a couple of friends, and I was like, I mean, how bad can it be? We're here at the pub having a beer. Like, it's going all right. I'm okay. It's
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
So yeah. It's not everything's not exactly how I thought it would be, but nothing has been at any point in my life. So I guess that's part of the deal of just getting older, isn't it? You just
That's
realize
what I'm
that
getting
all your
older.
plans are just a guess at the best.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Huh. So there was something you said about I think the work you do, there is no question about when you're older, when you look back to your life, you've done your work is meaningful. There's someone who could just start a business and make billions of dollars. They would still they may, some of them have found, some people have found their purpose while doing business, but some would not find their purpose. They would have all this stash of cash and they would still ask, what's the meaning of my life? I don't think you would ever have that problem, which is great. I think one of the biggest problems
Yeah, it's
ever
more.
have in life is not having a sense of purpose, not feeling like our lives did not really matter while we were here.
Yeah, I think I'm quite fortunate that I don't have that crisis of purpose, but I do often feel like I'm not doing a good enough job. That's more the anxiety that I feel. That, like, there's so much more that needs doing. There's so many more people that need help. There are so many systems that need changing, and you should do more.
So
That's
what,
the
so
that's
what more?
my
What,
sort
so
of
what
like
more?
internal
So what
demon.
more could you do? So when that demon speaks to you, what more could
Oh,
you do? I'm really curious. I really want to know.
yeah, I mean, I think it's all those things. It's the couple of hours where you weren't as productive as you could have been. It's the negotiation that fails. It's the negotiation that you did wrong, and you go, I missed something there, and I'm frustrated that I didn't get it over the line. It's the kid that doesn't go to work the first time, and you've got to work it out, and you've got to keep picking them up, and you're like, did I miss something? Did we get something wrong in that
Yeah.
support? It's the person that reaches out for help,
Yes.
and we don't have the capacity. And I think it is the worst to, like, not be able to pick them up and grab them and sort them out. It's the it's the gap between the things that I think about and that I write about and the things that I put in the world, like that I write articles about. I think, I should do more of that, and so there's lots of things. I mean, there's lots of things. I could go on for days about the stuff that I should do better at, but that's my sort of natural disposition, I think, just coming through a bit. That's pretty hard on myself about
I think you should give yourself grace.
that. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I wish I knew how. That's been a dominant theme of my life that I've always struggled
Yeah,
to
no, I
settle.
just choose just the way you give other people grace, give yourself grace. What else? Like, you could have gotten a job
Yeah.
making money doing your own thing, but you putting yourself out there to help people who they're not your family. You don't really have to. So I think the days you fall short, give yourself grace.
I will
so,
do my best.
so one of the reasons I got you on the show for many reasons. I'm about to round up. One of the reasons why I had you on the show is that I believe when you negotiate and you are honest, you're kind, you're genuine. Some people think it won't work in your favor, but it does. It builds you social capital. So when people know, okay, I sell real. I do. I have lots of hats that I wear. I sell real estate, and for the people I sell to, it's because they trust me. I don't have to try as hard because they know I'm not going to
Mm.
ask them to invest in what I wouldn't invest. I'm not in it. I'm in it to make a profit, but also I'm in it to make my friends win. Whoever buys advice through me. I'm like, I want you to win. I coach people. They pay me. I'm a high ticket coach. They pay me to coach them. But once they get on the program, I I'm fighting for them like it's mine, because to me it's not just I want you to win. It's more like, you give me all this money, you gotta win. So that's the mindset. So you just being nice. I think more people in business, more people out there, they should have that mindset, because at the end of the day, it makes it easier for you. You win more, you make more when you're nice. You may not when you're greedy. You don't have to be when you're greedy. You might make a lot more because you're stealing from people when you're greedy. But at the same time, your deals are easier when you're nice, when people like you for a genuine reason, not because you're fake. What last words do you have for my?
Yeah, and I think I don't know if you've ever met people who I've always found like the people who are most worried about being ripped off are the people that are ripping people off the most, and so I always think like that's a stress that I never want, and you can get taken advantage of. I've been taken advantage of, but there's a dividend that's like comes around in the way that people talk about you when you're not in the
Right,
room, and so many wonderful things and opportunities have come my way in rooms that I wasn't in
right,
because someone went something Josh or something someone just be nice, and then I get a call and they go, hey, I was speaking to Gloria and she said to give you a call. I'm like, I didn't even realize Gloria was talking about me in the world in a positive way.
yes,
And that's just because of that trust that you talk about. So I think the upside is that you don't have to look over your shoulder all the time, that you can hold your head high about how you've carried yourself in the world, and that people talk about you that way in rooms you're not in, as opposed to going, oh my God, do not ever do anything with Gloria, she's a nightmare, which you sometimes get the opportunity to do to people who have wronged you. It might come up one day, it might be 20 years down the track when someone says, oh, have you heard about this Pete guy? And you go, I actually have. And I don't think you should do that thing. And Pete doesn't know
correct,
that because he was awful to you, he's missed out on that.
yes.
So I think it is important to carry yourself that way because, it's less stress. It's a better way to live. And you set yourself up for opportunities that you don't have to be in the room to make happen. And those are really wonderful when they happen.
Where can my audience find you?
Look, I'm on the internet, Josh Reed Jones, on all the things, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok and stuff like that. I mean, I don't do a lot of TikTok, but, and Substack. So I do my blogs at Substack and stuff mostly. jbnproject.com, JBN, just be nice, jbnproject.com for the Just Be Nice project. joshreedjones.com. It's got some other bits and pieces on it going back a long way. So you can hop on if you want to chat about anything. Just send me a message, just like you did. I'm pretty open to people who are
You,
nice and
you, you,
you know
you,
just want to help everyone look after each other.
yes, 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 yes. Thank you so much for being on this show, Josh. I have three call to actions for my listeners. Normally I have three, but and then sometimes I have to, when it comes to my call to action, sometimes I have to think, oh, what am I going to ask people to do today? But for this conversation, it's so easy. Dear listeners, go be nice. Do something kind for someone today. You don't have to start a project like Josh has, but you can say a kind word to someone. You can be nice to your boss. You can be nice to the taxi driver. You can be nice to just do something. Just do something nice today, and then check it and say, you know what, I was nice to someone today. Then I have a second call to action. I want you to like this video. I want you to subscribe to my channel. I want you to share this information so we can grow our community.